What happens when a robber underestimates his target? On a quiet afternoon in a small bank, the life of a humble man can change forever when he encounters a desperate young man in search of easy money. William Bill Johnson, a 75-year-old black man, slowly walks to the teller, his cane supporting him with each step. He is known and respected in his neighborhood, a Vietnam veteran who, after years of service in the Special Forces, retired and leads a simple life. With a worn cap and reading glasses in the pocket of his shirt, Bill seems harmless, but behind his calm appearance lies a past filled with challenges and triumphs. A widower for 5 years, he goes to the bank every Thursday to withdraw his pension, maintaining a routine that brings him comfort amidst the pain of loss. On the other side of reality, Ryan "Rat" Miller, a 23-year-old white man, finds himself cornered between debts and life on the streets of Detroit. His story is marked by the absence of his father and poor choices that led him to get involved with gangs and drugs. With a cheap revolver in hand, he enters the bank, determined to commit his first robbery. For him, this is the only way to solve his financial problems, but he has no idea what he is about to face. When Ryan storms into the bank, the tension in the air is palpable. He yells orders, demanding money, while Bill watches the scene with a calm gaze. The veteran recognizes the young man's inexperience. Ryan's trembling hand holding the gun reveals his nervousness. Bill, guided by sharp instincts and years of training, decides it is time to act. In a quick and precise movement, he disarms Ryan with his cane and pins him to the ground, surprising everyone, including himself. The scene of the confrontation catches the attention of Karen Smith, a 50-year-old teacher who was in the bank. She has always admired Bill but never knew of his abilities. The revelation of his courage and skill inspires her to share Bill's story with the community. Meanwhile, Ryan, handcuffed and frustrated, begins to reflect on his life choices, seeing in Bill a father figure he never had. For Bill, the experience is a reminder of what he is capable of, leading him to reconsider his quiet retirement and think about helping the youth in his neighborhood. The story of Bill and Ryan is a powerful testament to how seemingly ordinary lives can intersect in extraordinary ways. In a context of prejudice and underestimation, the narrative reveals the inner strength that often goes unnoticed and the possibility of redemption for those who feel lost. Amidst a backdrop of struggle and resilience, Bill becomes a symbol of courage and hope, showing that it is never too late to start over and impact the lives of others. After that fateful afternoon at the bank, Bill Johnson's life changed in ways he never could have imagined. He became a local hero, with the story of his bravery spreading quickly throughout the community. However, what should have been a well-deserved recognition also brought to light a series of emotional and physical challenges that would test Bill's inner strength. With the attention on him, Bill began receiving visits from reporters and residents wanting to know more about what had happened. He, who had always been a reserved person, felt overwhelmed by the attention. Each question made him relive the moment of tension and the fear he felt when Ryan stormed into the bank. The veteran found himself struggling against memories he would rather forget, questioning his decision to act instead of hiding. He had always believed that true courage lay in avoiding conflict, but now he was being celebrated as a hero. This new status led him to reflect on his beliefs and his own identity. Meanwhile, Ryan, now in police custody, faced his own demons. The reality of his life of crime was becoming unbearable. He had always dreamed of getting off the streets, but the sight of Bill made him realize how lost he truly was. During the hours he spent in his cell, Ryan began to think about his past, the choices that had led him to this point. The figure of Bill, a man who not only survived but also fought for a dignified life, made Ryan feel a deep pain for his own decisions. He longed for a second chance, but he knew that life in prison could just be the beginning of a long journey of redemption. In the neighborhood, reactions to Bill's bravery were mixed. While some saw him as an icon, others questioned him. There were those who felt he should have let the police handle the situation, arguing that he exposed himself and others to unnecessary danger. Bill, upon hearing these comments, felt distressed. He did not want to be seen as a hero, but as an ordinary man who cared about his community. The pressure and expectations from others began to weigh heavily on his shoulders. Among the frequent visitors was Karen Smith, the teacher who had witnessed the event. She proved to be an unwavering friend, always willing to listen to Bill. Over time, their friendship grew. Karen had her own challenges. She dealt with a struggling school and the pressure from her students who faced problems similar to Ryan's. She saw in Bill an example of overcoming and strength, someone who could inspire not only young people like Ryan, but the entire community to come together for a greater purpose. Meanwhile, the judge overseeing Ryan's case decided that he should be sent to a rehabilitation program instead of receiving a heavy sentence. This decision brought a mix of relief and frustration for Ryan. He wanted a chance, but he also feared that rehabilitation might not be enough to change his life. The memories of what he had done, the shame and regret weighed on him, making each day an internal struggle. For Ryan, the idea of facing Bill again, of asking for forgiveness and trying to explain his side of the story, was terrifying. Bill, on the other hand, began to ponder what he could do to help the youth in his neighborhood. He realized that despite his age, he had the responsibility to share his story and his life lessons. He remembered his days in Vietnam, how he had learned to fight not just with physical strength, but with wisdom and compassion. He decided that he could become a mentor, someone who could help young people find a better path, away from crime and drugs. When Bill finally made the decision to visit Ryan in the rehabilitation program, he felt a wave of nervousness. He knew that this meeting could be a turning point, not just for Ryan, but also for himself. The idea of looking into the eyes of the young man who had threatened his life and, at the same time, seeing the possibility of redemption challenged him emotionally. The meeting between them, marked by a palpable tension, promised to be a decisive moment. Bill had to confront his own fears and prejudices, while Ryan sought the courage to open up and express the regret he felt. Both were about to embark on a journey of self-discovery and transformation, where true overcoming would require not just physical strength, but also deep reflection on their lives and choices. Bill Johnson sat in front of the mirror, observing his reflection. His eyes, marked by stress and sleepless nights, reflected a man in conflict. The memories of the fateful afternoon in the bank still haunted him, and now the pressure of being considered a hero only complicated his life further. He knew he was not a savior, but rather a regular man who acted in a moment of desperation. However, the expectations of others weighed on his shoulders like a burden. He took a deep breath, trying to prepare himself for the meeting with Ryan in the rehabilitation program. Meanwhile, Ryan was struggling with his own demons. That morning, he looked at himself in the cell mirror and saw a lost boy, someone who had made wrong decisions and now found himself at a crossroads. The image of Bill, the man who had faced terror in an extreme situation, would not leave his mind. He wanted to apologize, but the idea of confronting the man who had threatened him made him nervous. Ryan knew he needed to show Bill that he was more than the person who had been involved in a robbery, but the fear of not being accepted paralyzed him. The day of the meeting arrived. Bill entered the rehabilitation center, feeling his heart race. He remembered every step he took, as if the ground beneath his feet was filled with uncertainties. Upon entering the room, he saw Ryan sitting, head down, shoulders slumped. The tension in the air was palpable. Bill sat across from him, and the silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. I'm sorry," Ryan finally murmured, breaking the silence. "I didn't want things to happen this way." Bill looked at the young man, noticing the sincerity in his eyes. However, the pain of the past still hurt him. He remembered the fear he felt, the adrenaline that coursed through his veins when everything happened. Anger and resentment began to bubble inside him, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. "You don't understand," Bill began, his voice firm but laden with emotion. "That marked me. I'm not a hero. I did what I thought I had to do, but carrying this burden is not easy." Ryan lifted his eyes, and Bill saw the pain and understanding in them. It was a moment of connection, but also a reminder of the chasm that separated them. Meanwhile, Karen, the teacher, watched Bill's transformation from a distance. She knew that his journey would not be easy, but she believed in the potential of each step he was taking. Karen was dedicated to helping the youth in the community, trying to engage them in activities that would steer them away from negative influences. She began to plan an event in the neighborhood, a kind of festival that would celebrate stories of overcoming, where Bill could share his experience and inspire others. However, she faced resistance. Some residents thought the idea wouldn't make a difference, that people were beyond any help. This left her frustrated but also more determined. Bill, upon hearing about the event, felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. He knew this could be an opportunity to make a difference, but the idea of exposing himself again made him nervous. He remembered the voices that criticized him, the people who didn't believe he could truly help someone. The fear of failure pushed him back, and he began to question whether he had what it took to be a mentor. The situation became even more complicated when Ryan, in the rehabilitation program, began to be challenged by other inmates. Some of them didn't believe in change, and the provocations began to affect him. He found himself surrounded by people who viewed life differently, who didn't believe in redemption. The pressure to fit into a new group, to prove he was changing, was overwhelming. Ryan began to feel that perhaps he wasn't worthy of a second chance, and this led him to doubt himself. The night before the festival, Bill had a nightmare. He dreamed that he was back in the bank, facing Ryan, but this time he didn't have the courage to stand up. He saw the people around him in panic, and he felt helpless. When he woke up, the feeling of despair enveloped him. He didn't want to be a coward, but the idea of failing again terrified him. On the day of the event, the tension was in the air. Bill prepared to speak, his mind in turmoil. He looked at the crowd of young people and adults that had gathered, and for a moment he hesitated. He remembered Karen's words, her determination. He took a deep breath and decided that it was time to share not only his victories, but also his weaknesses. He knew that by doing this, he could not only help others, but also help himself face his own fears. As Bill prepared to step onto the stage, Ryan was struggling against the temptation to pull back. He knew that what he was about to do could be his last chance to show that he was more than his past choices. Both were on the edge of an emotional precipice, ready to take a step forever, with music and laughter. But the tension hung in the air like a dark cloud ready to break. Bill looked at the crowd and felt his heart race. He remembered all the times he had hesitated, every moment when fear had paralyzed him. As the young people danced and families gathered, he was about to take a step that could change everything. Ryan, on the other side of the space, watched the interactions around him. He felt a mix of hope and doubt. The taunts from his peers in rehab still echoed in his mind. "You can't change. You're just a criminal." Those words haunted him, and he wondered if he was really worthy of being there at the same event as Bill, the man who had faced his terror. When Bill stepped onto the stage, a wave of murmurs passed through the crowd. He felt the weight of their gazes upon him, and a knot formed in his throat. He was about to share his story, but the memories of the robbery and the fear became vivid once again. The audience expected a hero, but he felt like a broken man. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he faced the crowd. "Hello, everyone," he began, his voice trembling. "Today, I'm here to share something that isn't easy for me." He took a deep breath, trying to gather courage. "I'm not a hero. I'm a man who was afraid, and who in a moment of desperation made difficult choices. And even though I acted to protect my life and others, that doesn't make me a savior." The crowd listened in silence. He could feel their attention, but also their expectation. Bill looked ahead and saw Ryan looking on anxiously. An impulse of empathy hit him. He knew that Ryan was struggling with his own demons, and that the young man's fight was as real as his own. "I too am a victim of my choices," Bill continued. "I have carried the guilt and pain of what happened, but what really matters is what we do with it." As Bill spoke, Ryan felt a growing warmth in his chest. He began to realize that he was not alone in his pain. Bill's words echoed his own struggles, and the idea of redemption began to form in his mind. For a moment he forgot the taunts, the doubts, and the feelings of inadequacy. The man in front of him was sharing his weaknesses, and that made him reconsider his own choices. However, Bill's message had an unexpected impact on the audience. A group of young people who had seemed indifferent until then began to murmur among themselves. "He's not a hero," one of them whispered. "He's just making excuses." The words cut through the air like a knife, and Bill felt his heart sink. He realized that the struggle for acceptance and understanding was more complex than he had imagined. The tension rose when one of the young people stood up and shouted, "If you're not a hero, why should we care about what you have to say?" The murmur of disapproval grew, and Bill felt a wave of despair. He had hoped to inspire, but now he found himself facing judgment. Ryan, watching everything, felt that he needed to act. He couldn't let Bill's story be interrupted there. "Wait," Ryan shouted, standing up. All eyes turned to him. "He may not be a hero, but that doesn't mean his story doesn't matter. I'm a criminal, and I'm here because he made me realize that I can change too. We are not defined only by our mistakes." Bill looked at Ryan, surprised. The young man was exposing himself, sharing his own struggle. Ryan's courage was palpable, and it stirred something within Bill. He realized that behind the pain and fear There was an opportunity, a chance to connect, to create a space where failures could be discussed without judgment. The crowd fell silent, reflecting on Ryan's words. The tension began to dissipate, and Bill felt that a connection was forming. He looked at Ryan, and they exchanged a look of understanding. There, amidst the uncertainty, they found a common purpose, to show that overcoming was possible, even when life seemed bleak. The atmosphere of the festival changed. People began to applaud, first hesitantly, then with more strength. Bill remembered that he didn't need to be perfect to make a difference. He and Ryan were in this struggle together, and true strength lay in acknowledging their weaknesses and supporting each other. It was a new beginning, not just for them, but for everyone who was there. Both were ready to face their challenges, together. Clapping and shouting, the crowd began to mobilize. Bill felt a wave of relief mixed with a new adrenaline. He knew that something had changed in that moment, but the feeling of insecurity still lingered. The acceptance of the audience did not erase the fears that still inhabited his mind. The voices of doubt still whispered within him. However, Ryan's courage had ignited a spark of hope. After the speech, Bill stepped away from the stage and sought a quieter corner. He needed a moment to process everything that had happened. As he walked away, he noticed the glances of some people passing by. Some had encouraging smiles, while others had expressions of doubt. He realized that even with a small triumph, the struggle for acceptance was far from over. Ryan approached, still breathless from his declaration. "You were amazing," he said, trying to hold back his emotion. "People need to hear this." Bill forced a smile. The truth was that he still felt vulnerable, but the gratitude he felt for Ryan was immense. "Thanks, man, you were really brave too." But as they talked, a group of young people approached, their faces stern. One of them, the same one who had shouted earlier, stepped forward. "Do you really think you can change?" he asked challengingly. "You're just a criminal and he's just trying to redeem himself. That doesn't change what you did." Bill felt his heart sink again. The young man's words were like a punch to the gut. Ryan, sensing the tension, tried to intervene. "No one is perfect. We all make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we can't change." The group of young people exchanged glances, but the leader, still defiant, shook his head. "You two can try to convince yourselves, but the truth is that what you did defines you." The conversation was becoming increasingly difficult, and Bill realized that the battle for acceptance was just beginning. He looked at Ryan and saw his tense face. Frustration and fear were palpable. Maybe they're right, Bill thought, and doubt began to creep back into his mind. He knew he needed to find a way to deal with this, but he wasn't sure how. After that encounter, Bill decided he needed to step away from the crowd for a while. He found a quiet spot near a tree where he could observe the festival from a distance. Laughter and music still echoed around him, but he felt isolated. The words of the group of young people haunted him. Could it be possible to change, or would he always be seen as just the guy from the robbery? As he reflected, he began to think about his life before the incident. How much he had let himself be driven by fear and insecurity. He realized that to change, he would need to confront not just others, but himself. A new determination began to emerge within him. He wanted to show not only himself, but the world that transformation was possible. Ryan approached and sat down beside him. "I was thinking about everything they said," he said, breaking the silence. "But we can't let that bring us down. We need to keep fighting." Bill looked at the young man and saw the passion in his eyes. "You're right. But how do we do that? How can we prove ourselves?" Ryan thought for a moment. "Let's get involved in our community. We can help others who are struggling. If we show that we're trying, maybe others will see that change is possible." The idea began to take root in Bill's mind. He could use his story, his failures, as a way to help others. Together, they could create a safe space where people could talk about their fears and mistakes without being judged. It was a simple but powerful idea. It had the potential to change not only their lives, but also the lives of others who were struggling. As the festival continued, Bill and Ryan began to make plans. They talked about how they could get involved in rehabilitation programs, support groups, or even community events. The idea of becoming mentors for at-risk youth began to take shape. With each exchanged word, Bill's insecurity began to dissipate, giving way to a new hope. The journey wouldn't be easy, but together, they were ready to face the challenges. Bill realized that the struggle for acceptance and change was a path that couldn't be walked alone. He had a new ally, someone who was also seeking redemption. And so, with one step at a time, they began to build a more promising future, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. Bill sat under the tree, watching the festival that still pulsed around him. The laughter and music felt so distant, as if he were in a separate world. He felt the weight of the young man's words challenging them, echoing in his mind. The idea that his failures would always define him was a shadow that wouldn't let him be at peace. But as he looked at Ryan, who sat beside him, something began to change. Ryan had a special way of seeing the world. His determination and courage were contagious, and Bill began to realize that perhaps true change began with self-acceptance. He had always fought against his fears, but now he saw that those fears could be overcome. With a new focus, he decided he no longer wanted to be just a victim of his past decisions. He wanted to be someone who could inspire others. "Do you really think you can change?" The young man's challenging question still resonated in his mind, but now, instead of letting it bring him down, Bill began to reflect. He was no longer alone. Ryan was by his side, and together they could make a difference. The idea of getting involved with the community and helping those who were also facing difficulties seemed not only a way to find redemption, but a path to his own transformation. That night, as they walked through the festival, Bill talked to Ryan about his ideas. He spoke about how he could use his story to help others avoid making the same mistakes. Ryan listened intently, nodding in agreement. "That's right, Bill. People need to know they're not alone. We all face battles, and sharing our stories can heal." As the days went by, Bill's determination only grew. He began volunteering at a community center where at-risk youth sought support. Every time he spoke with them, sharing his experiences, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The life stories of the young people resonated with his own, and he realized they also had mistakes and challenges to face. Bill learned from them, and this exchange became a cycle of mutual growth. One day, while helping in a support group, Bill met a young woman named Clara. She was struggling with family issues and had distanced herself from school. Bill saw the pain in her eyes and in some way recognized a part of himself there. He remembered how lost and hopeless he had felt. By sharing his own story of overcoming, Bill saw a change in Clara's face. The glimmer of hope began to emerge. He realized that by helping others, he was also helping himself. With each new experience, Bill felt stronger. The insecurity that had accompanied him for so long began to dissipate. He was learning to trust himself, to accept that his mistakes did not define him. He was no longer just the robbery guy. He was a mentor, a friend, someone who had risen again and was now here to help others do the same. The friendship between Bill and Ryan also evolved. They became a team, each bringing their unique experiences and perspectives. Together, they created a support group for young people, where they could share their stories without fear of judgment. The space became a refuge, where laughter and tears mingled, and life lessons were learned at each meeting. The connection they had grown was not just special, it was transformative. Over time, Bill began to realize that success was not just about being accepted by the public, but about finding a greater purpose. He didn't need material wealth to feel fulfilled. True success was knowing he was making a difference in someone's life, that his journey of overcoming could inspire others to rise as well. Reflection became an important part of his life. Bill began to understand that all the challenges he had faced, all the failures were essential parts of his story. He was not defined by them, but rather by the courage to rise again and the desire to help others. The wisdom he had gained along the way now illuminated his path. Looking to the future, Bill saw a horizon filled with possibilities. He had learned to embrace his story, his failures and his victories. With each step he took, he felt stronger and more confident. He knew that although the struggle for acceptance and change would never end, he was no longer alone. And with that, the young man who had once felt lost began to become a beacon of hope for many. As Bill prepared for the weekly support group meeting, an unease began to grow inside him. It was the first time Clara, the young woman who had inspired him so much, would speak to the group about her experiences. He knew this was a crucial opportunity for her, but he also felt the pressure it brought. What would happen if she couldn't open up? What if she felt as lost as he had years ago? The thought made him anxious, but at the same time determined to support his friend in the best way he could. When the meeting began, the room was filled with eager and hopeful young people. Bill looked at Ryan, who gave him an encouraging smile. It was time for Clara to stand up and face her fears. The young woman took a deep breath, her eyes shining with a mix of nervousness and hope as she positioned herself in front of the group. Bill discreetly held Ryan's hand, prepared for anything that might happen. Clara began to speak, her voice trembling slightly. She described the problems at home, the feeling of isolation at school, and how she felt invisible to those around her. Bill watched her attentively, his heart aching with every word she spoke. He remembered his own pain, the loneliness that had accompanied him for so long. But unlike his past, he was now in a position of support and understanding. The room was silent, everyone paying attention to Clara's story. But as she delved deeper, her voice began to falter. Bill saw the tears welling up in her eyes, the fear of exposing herself, the dread of being judged. All of it threatened to crumble her courage. He remembered how he had felt when sharing his own story for the first time, and how the support from Ryan and the group had helped him move forward. Without thinking twice, Bill stood up. He walked toward Clara, feeling the weight of each step, but knowing he had to do this. When he reached her side, he turned to the group and with a firm voice began to speak. "I have been there too," Bill said, looking everyone in the eye. "I know that pain. I felt lost and hopeless as well. But what I learned is that talking about it is the first step to healing. Clara, you are not alone. We are here with you." Clara looked at Bill, and something changed in her gaze. The insecurity began to dissipate, and strength started to emerge. Bill continued, sharing parts of his own story, how he struggled to rise again, and the importance of finding support in the people around him. He spoke about the friendship he had built with Ryan, how their bond had become a pillar in his life. The group began to murmur, encouraging Clara to continue. The young woman took a deep breath once more, and with a renewed sparkle in her eyes, began to speak again. The words flowed, and as she opened up, the group engaged. One by one, other young people began to share their own experiences, transforming fear into a collective conversation of support and understanding. It was a moment of pure connection. Bill felt the warmth of empathy and solidarity filling the room. He realized that by facing his fears and helping Clara do the same, he was not only helping her, but also solidifying his own transformation. The tension that once dominated him was now turning into a feeling of accomplishment. At the end of the meeting, Clara smiled, her face lit up by a newfound confidence. The group applauded, and Bill felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He had overcome his greatest challenge, not only helping Clara find her voice, but also understanding that his worth was not in the failures of the past, but in the strength he found to move forward. As the young people dispersed, Bill and Ryan exchanged glances, sharing a smile of satisfaction. The friendship they had built had become stronger, and the journey they had begun together was now expanding to include others. Bill realized that his purpose was clear. He not only wanted to inspire others, but also wished to continue learning and growing with them. Looking to the future, Bill understood that challenges would never completely disappear, but now he had the tools and courage needed to face them. He was no longer a man defined by his failures, but rather a mentor, a friend, and a beacon of hope. And so, the journey of overcoming continued, not just for him, but for all those who crossed his path. After the meeting, the atmosphere in the room was still charged with emotion. Bill watched Clara, who was now animatedly chatting with some other young people. The sparkle in her eyes was a clear indication that she had found a new sense of belonging. He smiled as he realized how the group's support had transformed her insecurity into confidence. It was rewarding to see the change. Ryan approached Bill, putting an arm around his shoulders. "You were amazing, man." Clara really needed to hear that, and you helped her open up, he said, beaming with pride. Bill felt a wave of gratitude for having such a supportive friend by his side. "I couldn't have done it without you. Your presence always gives me strength," Bill replied, looking into Ryan's eyes. They knew that this journey was not just individual. It was a walk they took together, always supporting one another. As the young people began to disperse, Clara approached Bill and Ryan. She looked radiant. "Thank you, Bill. You helped me see that I'm not alone. That was the first step, and now I feel like I can face anything," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Bill felt his heart warm. That was what he wanted, for others to find the courage he himself had found. "You were very brave, Clara. Talking about your experiences isn't easy, but you did it with such strength." "I'm so proud of you," Bill replied, genuinely touched. The young woman smiled, and he saw the gratitude in her eyes. The connection formed there was palpable. Over the next few days, Bill had time to reflect on what had happened. He remembered how lost and alone he had felt in the past. The pain he had carried for so long now seemed a little lighter. Helping Clara find her voice not only helped her, but also helped him understand that his own journey was still ongoing. He was in a place where he could make a difference. At school, Clara began to open up more with her peers. She joined an art club, something she had always wanted to do but had been afraid to try. The support group had become a safe space for her, where she could express herself without fear of judgment. Bill was happy to see her flourish and connect with other young people who were also struggling. One day during lunch break, Bill sat with Ryan and Clara. They were laughing and sharing stories, and Bill realized how far they had all come. "I remember my first day here. I was so nervous, thinking I would never be able to open up," he said, looking at Ryan and Clara. "But now seeing you, Clara, standing up and speaking like you did, that inspires me." "And you were the reason I was able to do that," Clara replied. "If it weren't for your support, I might still be stuck in my silence." Bill fell silent for a moment, absorbing her words. He realized that each of them had a role to play in the other's life, and that was beautiful. In the following days, Bill began to get more actively involved in the support group meetings. He noticed there were other young people who also needed someone to guide them. He started sharing more of his own story, not just about his struggles, but also about his victories. The group became a space for exchange where everyone could learn from each other. The meetings became a pillar in Bill's life. He saw his friends and new members growing together, and that motivated him to be an even more present mentor. He realized that mutual support was crucial for everyone, and the friendship he had built with Ryan and Clara grew stronger with this new mission. In the quiet of the night, as he reflected on the day, Bill realized that he had found a new purpose. He was no longer the lost young man who once felt invisible. Now, he was a beacon of hope for others. And with each story shared, he felt stronger, more alive. The journey of overcoming was not just about him, but about all those he was helping to find their way. The lives of Bill, Clara, and Ryan were intertwined in a new chapter, one where each could help the other shine. And so, with every step they took together, hope blossomed, showing that even in the darkest storms, there was always a path to the light. Bill, Clara, and Ryan were living a moment of transformation. The impact that their individual experiences and struggles had on each other's lives was evident. The support group, which was once just a space for venting, became a symbol of strength and renewal. Bill began to realize that his own challenges were not just barriers to overcome, but valuable lessons that shaped who he was. Each story shared, each tear and smile contributed to a deeper understanding of what it meant to be truly strong. Clara's journey was a direct reflection of the support she received. She began to excel in her art classes, expressing herself in ways she never imagined she was capable of. The confidence she once lacked now shone through in every brushstroke, in every conversation. Clara was no longer the insecure young woman. She had become a source of inspiration for others. Bill saw how this transformation was a reward in itself, and it motivated him even more to continue his mission. Ryan, for his part, also felt a part of this change. He not only supported Bill, but also became a pillar for Clara. Together, they formed a network of friendship that transcended mere camaraderie. They became an example of how friendship can truly change lives and help heal wounds that are often invisible. Over time, Bill began to reflect on the true meaning of success. For him, it was no longer about material achievements or recognition, but about making a difference in people's lives. He realized that by helping others find their voices, he was also finding his own. Success then became a deeper and more meaningful concept, tied to the ability to touch the lives of others. The friendship that blossomed between them also brought a new wisdom. Bill understood that the path to overcoming challenges is filled with ups and downs, but that each step is an opportunity for learning. He remembered his own failures and how each of them had been an invitation to start over. This realization made him feel lighter, more willing to face new challenges. Life, as Bill learned, is a series of fresh starts. Each mistake and success was part of a journey that had no end. He felt grateful to have friends who supported him and who were willing to walk alongside him. This connection made him realize that true strength lies in acknowledging vulnerability and in being open to experiences. In the end, the story of Bill, Clara, and Ryan was not just about overcoming obstacles, but also about friendship. They became an unwavering support for one another, and this bond was the key to each person's growth. They discovered that even in the darkest storms, there is always a way to the light. Now Bill felt it was time to invite others to join this journey. He wanted more people to know that transformation and healing are possible. If you have been through difficult times or know someone who needs support, don't hesitate to share your story. Every account has the power to inspire and encourage others to find their own voices. Engage in the comments, share your experiences, and help build a stronger community. Remember that your story could be the key for someone to find the light they so desperately need. Like, subscribe, and be part of this change now.